Captain's log, Stardate supplemental.
Welcome to Stardate Supplemental, a Star Trek show about the ship not named Enterprise. We are hosts, the Brothers Weems. I'm Kyle Weems.
I'm Conrad Weems.
And we made it to another Saturday night. In 2021, that's kind of an accomplishment. So, in a way, we're all heroes. By the way, if you've just joined us, I want to let you all know there is a poll that you can see. If you hover over the screen, there'll be a little icon. Click it. There'll be 6 little tabs that you can go through with stupid multiple choice questions that are going to torment Conrad later in our brand new C-plot segment that we're doing.
Hey.
Yeah, this is going to be great. Conrad, you can't do the poll. Don't look at the poll. So it's just going to be, a gimmick for me, and you have to suffer for our joy. So, yeah, just a kind of a heads up as to what's going on there.
Nice.
Absolutely. So how's your week been, man?
I would say actually kind of dull. It's one of those weeks where it's the weekend now, and I feel like there's definitely not enough weekend because my work week was one of those weeks where it was like every time you turned around, it was a new message or ping from somebody being like, hey, I know we already got a lot of stuff we need from you, but could you do something even more obscure and difficult for us? And we kind of need it, like, right now. And then there's a point where it's like, I'm being like, so which of the right nows is the real right nows? There was a conference call that got started before I even technically clock into work.
Oh, those are always fun. I love those.
I spent so much time working on some of the most, like, you look at the finished product of what you're like, okay, so this is what we did all day. And you're like, is this like 26 lines of an email and like a few tables on a spreadsheet, and you're like, yeah, that's exactly what that is.
Exactly
why that takes so long? And I'm like, I really don't want to try to explain it to you, but that was my day. So it was one of those weeks where it just felt like it was nonstop, working late hours. It was a little brutal. But
so sorry to hear that, man. I mean, I had some dodgy documents I had to critique, and it's like how you try to compliment sandwich sometimes, something that's like, it takes a little bit of a glow up. I mean, the end product's going to be great. It's just in the early stages of anything like that. Code documentation, I tell you what. But we don't need to bore everybody with that.
Everyday night's all right for fighting, says Chameleon in the chat. And you know what?
Right. Because, from the earlier part. I agree. So let's do this.
We got some of my my faves from our last few in here. We got Outer Gods back. We've got Chameleon Kali. We've got Mouse Winestan, which I believe is supposed to be Moose Winestan. Yeah.
Yeah, I know who that one is.
Whispering. A few names I don't recognize that I don't know if they were in last time. Cinemancer, Bible Thumps.
Are we just going to now say the name of everybody and make them
everybody?
Internet
That's what
famous?
You do. You give them that audio. I'm just admiring our repeat fans. One of them left because I said their name, I think. That's amazing.
Look at what you did. Don't chase them off. Don't bore them. We got to keep...
it's the live experience. You gotta interact with them. Just to get
already the most important. Good to know, Ocarina 1. I don't know who that is. Actually, I do. But anyway. So, Connor, you were talking about your shower curtain background in the pre-show.
This is not a shower curtain. This is like
I'm not sure if my office is good, although the designer-y style shelf from IKEA helps a bit.
You notice we both have doors. Like, I've got my
the
door.
door hides a horrible shelf. See, it's really messy.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I put the door, but the Christmas tree's gone. I had that up last week. I finally got that down. It only took forever. I know this is great radio for when we're doing the when we convert this to the pod, but for all you live show people, it was back there for the radio people. There used to be a Christmas tree that was in the shot.
Way in a little bit of how the secret sauce is made, and in this case, the secret sauce is made in a closet.
It's just mayonnaise and ketchup. Everyone knows it. Or it's just Thousand Island. It really is one of those two things.
Okay, Thousand Island's the easy way, but mayonnaise, ketchup. The secret ingredient is a little bit of relish and maybe a dash of mustard.
Dash of mustard.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent a lot of time today trying to make a sort of like a garlicky recipe for fried chicken that I hadn't done before. And it's like, one of those ones where like after an hour of labor, you get a product and you're like, well, it's edible. And that's about all you have to say for it. Yeah, that's why.
It's worth it.
Yeah, Chameleon Kale was saying I want a burger. I was in a different Discord earlier that he was at. I'm still wanting that burger, Chameleon. It's the American dream, I think, honestly. Burgers on Saturday night. Man.
Saturday night.
What do you think like a Vulcan themed burger at like a cheesy Federation restaurant would be? Because
We're not talking like an actual Vulcan made burger. We're talking you order the Vulcan burger, and it's made by like a human and Andorian who are running like the burger truck,
well,
which
yeah.
the burger shuttle, the food shuttle that's parked down out in front of the embassy.
It's like a shuttle food truck. So Chameleon Kale says plain burger, no cheese. I could see that. This is like when you're like in America, we'll go and we'll make like a Japanese burger, so they just put like a katsu patty on it. Or if you're in Japan, they call it an American burger, and they kind of nail us because it's like 3 patties and more cheese than you could ever eat. And you're like, you called us out, right? But what would a Vulcan burger, in your opinion?
So this, I'm going to draw on another sci-fi franchise, one so old that very few have probably seen this. So do you remember Earthstar Voyager, right? From
That's
our
not
childhood?
that old. It just was so short-lived. Yeah, it was.
Well, like they had the pilot.
Was that
episode.
just the pilot? It was just the pilot.
It was done on Wonderful World of Disney, and they were like, "It's a movie." What you could tell is they were like, "Guys, we need to air something." You remember that pilot we shot for that show? We
Had to
decided not
burn it
pick
off,
up?
man.
And I can hear everybody there. They're like, "What is Earthstar Voyager?" If you're not a certain age, it's never been aired again. It was aired like once.
So I know exactly what you're going to say, though, because you and I watched that on VHS like 20 times.
A million times. But like, there's so it's set in the future, and things are kind of dystopian, which is why this ship of hapless students gets sent off into
So
space.
it's set
colonizing
today,
another world.
basically.
Basically now, it's basically set in 2020 as seen from the 1980s. And there's this burger shop they go to, and they order burgers from, and like this machine brings it up out of the ground, out of the floor in front of you at your table. But like by burger, I mean like it looks like quasi cardboard printed buns with like a blue vegetable pressed.
I believe it was
burger.
a seaweed burger inside a rice cake bun.
What they were trying to do.
It was the driest, crackliest. Yeah. So you're saying Vulcans would do that?
That, my friend, is the Vulcan burger.
That's joyless. That food shuttle is not going to get enough business to. It's a good thing it's the Federation.
It's on the menu for when you bring your friends that are like, I can't eat like anything good. You're like, cool, you want the Vulcan burger. The Vulcan burger's description on the menu is, it's joyless, don't ask what's in it.
Whereas the Bullion burgers item on the menu is only Bullions are allowed to eat this, because it's like Bullion food is highly toxic to most folks.
Serve this to non-Bullions.
Your brave friend orders gach. Yeah, man, that's a gach burger. Or would that be kind of more like a sloppy Joe, like a sloppy gach sandwich?
The gach comes in like it's a fry container, like one of those cardboard things, and they just take a scoop of live gach and just flop it in there.
Just like the little scoop that they use for mashed potatoes and ice cream. Yeah,
you're like, I'll take the Earth burger and a side of gach. And they're like, we call that the enemies of the past, allies of the now. And it's a regular, like, good old-fashioned, like, cheeseburger and a cardboard fried container with, like, a scoop of live gach.
Gach and go. Yeah, that's a good name. Based on what we've seen, a surprising amount of people in the Federation will actually eat gach for reasons that are beyond me. But I would try it exactly once, unless it was moving, in which case, I'll be honest, I would try one worm and be throwing up in the corner for the next 10 to 20 minutes. Just the wriggling.
So I got something for you.
Yeah?
Because on my desk, it's dangerous. I shouldn't put anything on my desk when we're doing this.
Shake the whole thing.
So obviously, I had crazy work, and you had a failed chicken experiment, it sounds like.
Failed chicken experiment.
What made you happy this week, though? What was a tiny nugget of joy?
We're doing this again? Did we do this last time?
We did. It's a
tiny
mindfulness
nugget
exercise.
of joy.
Look, it's 2020. What is the tiny nugget of joy you had this week?
I'm just going to be cheesy. Seeing my nephew on video was great. That happened a couple of times. When you are brother of the show, Eric, and I keep putting the mouse in front of you, by the way. Hi, there's a mouse cursor on video. It's really great. Brother of the show, Eric, and then you brought in nephew/son of the show, Lloyd. And he's kind of able to stand when you hold him now and all that. That was pretty cute.
And he's very happy about it. This is definitely a week where he has learned, like, he's more aware of his existence as an individual, I think, and therefore understands, like, fear and, like, detachment. So he'll do that thing where, like, people walk too far away, or he wakes up in the middle of the night and it's dark and he's just like, and that's a little rough, because it's kind of like he's high maintenance right now. He's cute, but he's high maintenance. I did send you a picture of feeding him, though. I don't know if you prepped it for our guest,
I
but there's
didn't.
a very adorable. Oh, you should have.
Is this from a few weeks back?
The one I sent you is from a couple weeks ago. I sent you one from like this week, which is way messier, but it was a really cute one. But what brought me a joy, despite the cuteness of my son this week, honestly, the biggest nugget of joy for me this week was on Friday night. Me and Casey, girlfriend of the show, we got Bantam 46 for dinner. And for those of you that don't know, that aren't Bellingham locals or just aren't aware of it, this fried chicken place downtown that I used to live across the street from, and in pre-pandemic times was already hard to get a table at, let alone, and that would be like if you went there immediately when they opened. But they're doing takeout right now, and it's a little spendy, but oh my gosh, it is some of the best fried. Like, it's just joy. It's fried chicken, delicious, well-made fried chicken, and you can get all the usual fixins if you want. But it just like sitting there shoving fried chicken into your face and not crying at the beautiful simplicity of like properly made food that you didn't make yourself. Really, so good.
Food you didn't make yourself. I have to be honest. It's a real pleasure right now. It's glorious, as Camille and Kel just said. And yeah, Bantam 46 is actually good chicken. I remember pre-pandemic when you, Janae, my wife, and I would rush to because it gets busy so fast. It'd be like you're off of work, sprint rush to try to like land a reservation. We only did it like 2 times, I think, successfully before.
It's really hard.
Good fried chicken.
That was my nugget of joy, and my pitch to help them survive the pandemic is to any Bellinghamsters who haven't tried them. You can order online, but you got to order early, like early on. They've gotten faster at it, but there's a point in the night where they're only open for like 3 hours, and if you wait too long, you won't get your order in. But oh, they're so good. Buy some chicken from them, Bantam 46. Tell them Cobra sent you, which actually they don't know who that is. So
yeah,
unlike some places downtown.
You're saying Prestige isn't there? I just realized I'm not wearing a ball cap. It won't matter for the people in pod, but look at how long and gray my bangs are getting. This is insane.
You already had some gray before 2020, but
yeah,
2020 definitely added some in. It put a little bit on. The beard got a little gray in the 2020 for me, but the hair's not too bad yet. There's a little there, but it's not too bad.
A little there. Old man vanity at this point. But I mean, seasoning is all great, but I think it's going to be all salt at this point,
seasoning
which is bad for your heart. Yeah, but you're saying seasoning is spice. That's like saying spice is the spice of life.
Look, I'm a dad now. I got to practice this stuff. This is important. Like,
you gotta get the cheesy dad jokes. Oh man,
yeah.
I don't know about that. Oh. Well, do we want to? Can I make this as slow as possible? Transition into talking about this week's episode, and it's kind of like spaceships instead of singular, because kind of we have some very short-lived cannon fodder in this episode, or
watching it through,
or do you want to practice more dad jokes?
We've had some short screen times, and there's one I'm like, I think we saw it for a half second before it blew up, and that's
it wasn't
that's
great.
on par for us. So let's do that.
Let's do it. All right. If I can find the magic switch. I have so many buttons, Connor. You have no idea. It's just sort of terrifying. Okay. And I still don't have, like, a thing for the for the bump.
Commander, there's a vessel approaching on an intercept course.
Really need to work on a bump thing.
I know. Well, Connor, I've done so many things for this pod, actually. You just show up and you sound and look sexy. I have to, like, make screens.
Hey, I put on a shirt with buttons, and I wiped my son's drool/burp up out of my hair and combed it again. So he was being feisty, and lately he likes shoulder rides. And, well, you know what? When you have a baby who's on the edge of teething, he chews on the back of your head, and at some point all that milk comes back up. So that's the work I do to bring the charm to the show.
Well, as long as you're bringing the charm, you know what I just realized is I have the wrong information up on the screen. So
yes, that's Nico.
Yeah, I know, right?
What kind of dog and pony show is this?
I know. You think I'm an expert, but you'd be wrong.
Today's dog and pony show is actually coyotes and mules. It's close, but not quite.
Close, but not quite.
Also, is that like a real thing? Are dog and pony shows a real thing? I mean, that's one of those old expressions that you hear. This dog and pony show. One, I can't imagine that translates into a lot of languages very well. Where they're like, "What the heck are you talking about?" And then two, if they ask you what you're talking about, you're like, "I actually don't. I think it's an old cowboy thing. I don't know."
Right? So watch, you get to see me edit it live because I'm
We
a
get to see a little bit
professional.
more of the secret sauce.
Yeah, you get to see how the sausage is broken. Why can't I
I need
select
I
it?
need like the ability to like make like secret sauce containers appear on the screen or something.
You know,
like
normally I'm able to. Oh, right. I have to unlock it. Wow, I'm an expert.
Kyle, we also need like a please stand by like thing you can flash up.
Oh
That's
yeah, I
just,
definitely need that.
You
For
can
like
just
when
put
we
up the
race to the
jousting
bathroom.
ad thing I do, and we could be like technical difficulties. I could update that. You can just put that up on the screen.
That would be smarter than everything I'm doing. But where would all the flavor be? Also, the screens are moving in the background because I have to.
Yeah.
They're all tied to it, right?
Hey, you
There
know
we
what,
go.
everybody? While Kyle
I just
fixes
finished.
the slides, how's everybody doing out there? You having a good night? What brought you joy this week? Tell us in the chat. Did anything good happen? Or
This is
did you have
sounding
a
like a
bad
cheese
week?
hearing.
Do you want to tell us about it? We can, this isn't just a show where we talk to you, but you could talk to us. I mean, this is like a therapy on Saturday night in Star Trek form.
Wow.
I'm Dr. Cobra, and I'm listening.
Stardate Supplemental would like to let you know that Conrad, in fact, has no medical degree and is not licensed to offer therapeutic or medical advice in any official practitioner capacity.
I didn't say it was a medical doctorate, but
Yeah, Whispering says it was a real busy week, but she got to do a lot of new things, which was exciting. Yeah, Whisper did the first video stream for Twitch. That was pretty cool. So it's doing roguelikes, FTL, in fact. So that was pretty cool. I'm going to say now I have fixed the things.
you have
Stone
fixed the
Soup
things.
said, got to spend weekend with pandemic friends online. Oh, we're all a bunch of saps. I love it. You're all awesome too. Thank you for
Hey, you know
showing up.
what? Gets us through the pandemic, right? Fried chicken, friends online, crying quietly in a closet as you stare out a window.
Too many
forlornly.
donuts. I mean, not to judge myself.
I have eaten more donuts in 2020 than
I haven't eaten
the
enough.
year before.
Mostly the little chocolate ones. I need to get like some crawlers or something. I don't know.
It's definitely more McDonald's than I ate in the last 5 years combined. I'm not ashamed to admit that.
Right.
If I had a replicator, that would be bad. All right.
Okay, I got to warn you, accordion time. All right, everybody. Today we're talking about the Lysian Central Command and a couple of their so-called ships coming from Star Trek Next Generation Season 5, Episode 14, Conundrum. This was a great standout episode from a great season. But we're going to just give you a really brief look at what happens. Here's the title card of everyone looking really confused. But the most important thing to note is that Data's playing bartender when the episode starts, because Troy, it turns out, is a chess wizard and beat him at chess. Which, let's be honest, if Data is more advanced in modern computers than he is now, and modern computers can kick our butts every time, it means Troy is either a super genius or Data has a really bad chess program. I'm not.
A quick aside. She beat Data, which is impressive, but he's basically a chess computer. But is Troy a chess wizard playing the people whose minds she can quasi-read as an empath?
Oh, see, Data doesn't have, like that against normal people. Actually, that'd be kind of messed up. I mean, she can only read emotions, but that'd kind of give you an edge, I would think. But against Data, it actually had to work out. Oh, Chameleon Kill asks, what if Data threw the match? It's possible. Maybe he just wanted to pour drinks. Maybe deep down, Data wanted to be a bartender. Point is, we get to see Data behind the bar, which is hilarious because he's going to lose his mind and temporarily think he's a bartender. Meanwhile, a small ship, which is a recycle of a design we've seen a lot on Stardate Supplemental, appears in front of the Enterprise. Conrad, this is the Packlead ship, redecorated. It's a little grayer that's got these green glowing lights attached. I think it's got kind of a nice vibe.
I like the lights, and it looks like there's like they got a dish satellite receiver on top there, slapped above some of those lights.
So it gets direct TV. It's not the best internet, okay? It's not the best cable, but they're doing what they can. Anyway, this thing comes in. It's on screen for 4 seconds. They go, what's going on? It's a small ship with a single pilot, and then it shoots this beam of light that just sort of sweeps through everyone with this really low-budget 90s special effect, like where they're basically just painting a green line on the screen. And incidentally, Ensign Rolaren is in this episode. Now, what does it do, Conrad? It wipes their minds, and it wipes all the databases of personal information on the Enterprise. Now, it could be a similar galactic dealership with some custom lighting, says Stone Soup incidentally about the ship. Well, yes, maybe the Packleds are buying from the same people. Or they bought from the Packleds, which would explain a lot. So what's great about this, Conrad, is sort of how subtly they do it. There's this memory loss, and then there's this other guy standing around with like Riker's spare uniform on, acting like he's as confused as everyone else. Played the long game on this way. It's Kieran McDuff, allegedly. And they get so confused because they don't know what's going on. For like the first third of the episode, Worf assumes he's in command because he, A, is a Klingon, and B, has a cooler outfit than everyone else. And everyone just goes with it, which is great.
Everybody goes with it, but Picard gives him the side eye a lot. Like, he's
like
not
Picard's
buying
like,
it.
I'm not
like,
sure.
Picard's like, I've got 4 pips, and you sound awfully trigger happy. I don't know about this.
Yeah, but at the same time, I really appreciate that sense of like, well, we have to make this work as a unit. So even though Picard's giving suggestions, Worf's actually the one making the calls for the first bit. Meanwhile, Beverly is thankfully able to remember she's a doctor because she knows what to do. And I feel bad for this poor ensign that randomly shows up because the only thing she knows is she's wearing a bathing suit, right? Broke her arm swimming. That's like a really bad situation to be in because there's no context as to who she is with the memory loss. Speaking of no context, these two who normally can't stand each other, Riker and Ensign Ro Laren, see how close they're standing? Yeah, they get really going. They get a ship name. I think it's Roker. Oh, wait, that's like Al Roker. You know what? I'm going to stick with it. So anyway, these two get hot and heavy because they don't remember who they are, but they're both wildly sexually aggressive people. So it works out.
Well, their usual tension and animosity transforms into a different kind of tension.
Right?
And
Meanwhile,
Data
Data still thinks he's a bartender for a good while, which is fantastic because there's this Guinan-like moment when he pops up behind the bar and just asks people if he can serve them drinks. And they're like, nah, it's good. And no one questions the fact that this like $40 million man is just, a replicator, basically. But they let it slide. Finally, they're able to pull up enough of the ship computer because Geordi's a wizard and can fix anything with enough time. And they get the names of all the command crew. So they know that Picard's the captain, but this other guy that we haven't seen, Kieran McDuff, is allegedly on the ship. And then Worf is very disappointed and sad because he learns he's like 8th in command. Which is, instead of in charge. In addition, they're able to recover their mission logs, which clearly have been faked because it says the Federation is at war with the Lysians. And this is the diagram of their central command station, which they're going to have to all go and destroy on a top secret, no radio mission. Don't talk back with the base. And of course, it's going to be really hard because none of them know who they are. They remember their skills, but they don't have any other context, so they have to take this all in faith, which weighs heavily on Picard. Meanwhile, Troy starts flirting with Riker because it's Riker, and those two have a history. So this is all going to come to haunt Riker later, meanwhile, going back and forth with the ladies. Lysian Destroyer appears. Connor, this was on screen for 4 seconds before they blow it up.
I thought the explosion effect was particularly nice.
Right? But this was also another recycle. And then they finally get near the command center, and there's these drones that attack them. And they're really
like
cool.
those drones.
They're really cool looking sentry pods, and they even have cool looking lasers. But it takes literally 2 seconds, like 2 seconds from when they hit fire, for them to destroy the entire defenses of the central command. Which, by the way, in this shot, this is a redress, I believe, of the Edo model from way back in season 1. Doesn't this kind of look like it's Mass Effect colored?
It does kind of have a Mass Effect-y vibe, especially with the color and kind of the style. But you're right, that's Edo, the space god.
Right.
Which I was never too clear on. Was Edo like an artificial intelligence, a supercomputer, a space station of horny people who like to watch the people of Edo, like, do their thing? Like they just kind of like, we're just gonna go with it and like fly away.
Right? Yeah, because I mean, you look at it and you're like, it looks like a space station, right? Anyway, well, this is clearly a space station. They discover that one photon torpedo is enough to blow them up, so they get very suspicious. This Kieran McDuff guy tries to take over the ship to blow it up because it turns out he's actually an alien. Conrad, he is a really, really ugly alien hiding underneath it. I'm not trying to judge, but he's got some H.R. Geiger, is that the right name? You know what I'm talking about. The aliens guy. Anyway.
Right, it's definitely some Geiger-esque
He throws
creepy
Worf
cheddar.
because Worf only exists to be thrown by aliens, and then Worf and Riker double ping phaser him because they're best buddies, and that's what best buddies do. And in the end, they manage to decide we're not going to destroy the station until we figure out what's going on, and they get better. You're going to say something.
I am gonna say something because Riker is like on it, like Worf does the and he gets like thrown across the room, and you're like, holy crap. Meanwhile, Riker's got like, I don't know, he's got like a glove compartment over there in the first officer's chair that he keeps a full size. It wasn't a key fob phaser, that was a full size phaser. He doesn't normally have one of those like hanging out.
He had that in his hand when he sat up. You're not wrong, right? It's like, what's going on, Riker?
So I think that there, what you can't tell is that inside that wood paneling, there's like a concealed glove compartment.
Ooh, like instead of like a beverage tray, it's just like a little phaser tray.
Well, you could put whatever you want in it, right? But Riker, he stashes in there, a phaser usually. Picard's has got like it's not the same.
Right? So in the end, they discover they're able to recover their memories. They are, in fact, not at war. They apologize for destroying the one ship, and they go about their business. Unfortunately for Riker, Troy and Laren have a conversation about him and about and I don't really know what they said to each other, but they both really enjoyed tormenting him at the end of this episode.
They give him a really hard time for a being like Riker, and it's like, okay, so Troy makes advances on him during this, but him and Troy aren't technically on during this time period.
Not technically, Conrad. They are friends, not lovers. She has no claim on his dating calendar
and
at all.
And he didn't, to my knowledge, actually do anything with her while he was with
Ro. Yeah.
Although that is funny because that does mean that Ro is officially one of Will Riker's ex-girlfriends.
Which is still better than being one of Worf's ex-girlfriends. Because with the exception of Troy, they're all dead.
Is Laren dead? Wait, what?
Worf's ex-girlfriends.
Oh.
/ wives,
Actually, yeah, I can't think of anybody that Worf
doesn't go well. Don't kiss that handsome mountain of a man. It's not gonna pay out.
Look, when you get into the Son of Moog, right? Like the Sons of Moog, man, they're passionate, they're furious, but they're just bad luck. That whole house is cursed. We've got some great comments going on here. Okay, so beats by Swag Kevmo. So Kevmo, our editor, Kevin.
Editor of the show.
That's like a Halloween Reaper chest with a melted gorilla mask. And that is a excellent description of our... Yeah, that right there. Our alien of the week here. And then he's like, did you notice how he thrusts like he's playing a trombone? It's a little...
Yeah, the gossip between the two.
Little spicy gossip there, but okay. And then Chameleon's pointing out the fact that 100% mortality rate and the most dangerous job in Starfleet is dating Worf, which makes me wonder, is it like a job? Is there does like an admiral call you up somewhere? They're like, look, this Klingon and Starfleet thing is really good for us, so we need this to keep going. And we've noticed he's starting to get a little testy, so we thought it's about time for him to get a new girlfriend. And you get like hazard pay, except for you don't get paid. I don't know how that...
If you get hazard pay to date Worf, that's a whole realm
in a
of
society
conversation.
without money.
Yeah, that I'm not sure I'm ready to be a part of.
Without money.
So that's the episode. It's actually really well done because you know what's going on for the most part, but they don't. And it's really fun, the lightheartedness of them. Like, there's a lightness as they kind of are like, well, we don't know who we are, so we're going to have fun with this while trying to solve this very difficult problem at the same time. I feel like it was really an exciting episode. It's too bad we don't see some of our fan favorites, like the Chief, maybe. I would have loved to have seen how O'Brien handled this whole thing.
That'd have been fun, but I think the Chief, wasn't he already on DJ
Nope.
Stein at this point?
He will appear in Power Play, which is the very next episode.
Oh.
By the way, which will be also one that we cover, where he gets possessed by an evil spirit. So.
I feel like there's a wasted opportunity to have the Chief, maybe Keiko, but they did bring out, Laren, which was fun.
Yeah,
so.
and Ro's always fun and doesn't show up nearly enough for how great of a character she's introduced to be. So, Conrad, let's talk about it. So we're going to talk about the Lysians in general, but we'll also briefly mention the Satarans. Actually, no, we won't. So the Lysians are one of those has-been, like, tier 3 races. They're 100 years behind the Federation in technology, warfare technology, at the very least, right? But they clearly own a large enough portion of space to not only have other nation states that they're opponents of, but that, they have, a widespread net of defenders to protect it. And it's kind of like, you have to wonder what it's like appearing late in the game.
Well, what gets me is that the plot makes clear that like this whole thing could have been solved by one photon torpedo, right?
Yeah.
And their enemies are another race that's about 100 years behind, if not more, on the war game front, even though they have this cool mind technology. And it's just like, it's a good thing that their arch enemies are from a similar technological level as opposed to, I don't know, the Klingon Empire, who's just like, oh, hey, and then they're like, the Klingons would have no ethical concerns with a photon torpedo to solve this, and then murdering all of their leaders and then setting up the governor and taking over the.
Which really presents some interesting questions if you say that, right? Because first off, like you said, one torpedo central command. If the Klingons felt like it, assuming that they were there wasn't a buffer between them, like the Federation or something, they literally could just have one bird of prey conquer the entire place, and this is a warp.
A lot of glory in that.
This is a warp capable species who are so bad that even our tier 2 races like the Kalarians and the children of Tamar could hold their own against the Klingons at least a little bit during the battle.
The children of Tamar actually had equivalent to Federation technology.
Right, just not as large of a territory, right?
Just not as large. But I think the Talarians, they were the super warlike, we wear helmets, we don't touch aliens, we wear gloves people. Right?
I mean, they're not going to hold their own very long, but they'd at least put up a good fight.
The Talarians have a reputation as badasses, so I assume that to them, this would be a good opponent to fight, even though the Talarians are like, let's shoot the Enterprise. The Enterprise is like, so how do we get out of this without blowing them all up? Because, they can't even get through our navigational shields.
So yeah, it kind of makes you wonder what kind of questions of sovereignty you would have to have as a species like this, because they're in theory as a warp capable species who have control over their own world. They could say apply for Federation membership as long as their values aligned, which would be valuable. But of course, that would be a loss of sovereignty when you get absorbed into a larger state. But if you stay sovereign, the Ferengi could conquer these people. You know what I mean?
If the Ferengi were into that, which they don't seem to be too into.
It'd be a very tense situation in diplomatic negotiations.
The Ferengi would like to buy and sell. They're not really that interested in conquering.
Well, sure. But war is good for business.
Yeah, but not when they're the ones doing the war. They want somebody else to do the war. Like, for instance, the Ferengi would like to sell to both sides of this conflict.
Yes, that's true. They absolutely would. So here's Jordy looking at a diagram of the thing, and it's just a 3D model. It's not very interesting. Let's start with their command center. So this is a reuse of the Edo vessel from season 1. We never covered that because in that episode it was sort of a god of this planet of mostly naked pleasure people who kill you if you if you jaywalk, basically. Chameleon Kell says he thinks it looks like a rescue inhaler.
I saw that, and I couldn't. Oh my gosh.
Oh, by the way, before we go any further, I want to remind anyone that just jumped on or that hasn't yet, we have a little poll that you can get if you hover over the stream. You'll see it, click it. There's 6 questions on it, and these are going to be important for our next segment to torment Conrad with. They're silly little questions. They're multiple choice. Just click one for each of those to help decide what happens in that segment. Conrad, you're not allowed to answer that because you are going to be the victim of it. I find it interesting whenever Central Command is just a space station. Doesn't that seem like a tactical weakness?
It does seem like a tactical weakness, and it's got... Okay, so here's the thing. It's called Central Command. So I'm getting some Cardassian vibes, right?
Yeah.
And can I just say that this looks like a rejected Cardassian architect's space station design? Like, think about Deep Space Nine and how it looks with the pylons and everything like that. You've got a central disk, and you've got, like, 3 pylons, but they all go down. 2 are straight, and 1's angled weird. It's like... So basically the lesser grad student, so imagine 2 grad students in Cardassian design philosophy for military space outposts. One is the one that goes on to design Terok Nor and all of which becomes Deep Space Nine and all of its, buddy stations with its beautiful 3 prongs up, 3 prongs down. That meanwhile, his competitor, they have the same professor, fellow grad student, is the one who designed this. And it's like 2, and then like the weird angle down, and it's like purple, and rejected, and instead finds a career with the Lysian Central Command, setting theirs up. I mean, it's like a rejected Cardassian grad student.
I feel like this is more Federation designed. It's got smoother edges, the coloration, etc. But
no. The Federation doesn't like space stations with multiple parts. The Federation space stations are one big giant floating space cylinder with like a mushroom head and maybe some extra docking ports. This is way too fancy for Federation space station design.
Okay, all right, sure. I disagree, but I'll allow you to be right. That said, so they said there were 15,000 people on this station, and when you look at it, it dwarfs the Enterprise. What I love, Conrad, is if you see the tilted leg, you notice how it kind of looks like there's a bunch of superstructure coming off of it, maybe like buildings, like skyscrapers or whatever. And yet, despite the fact that it's so large and holds so many people, it's not sturdy enough that more than one photon torpedo is necessary to fatally wound it. Like, that's makes you wonder, how do you get something that big that can't withstand? Because even the Enterprise without its shields can survive a photon torpedo, barely, but still, you know.
Again, like, look, it wasn't the top bidder that built this. I'm telling you. That's the thing. It's a government contract job. They've got budget constraints to work with. Yeah, there's an exposed reactor cowling, and if like any of the primary gas mains get the whole thing's going up like a. But what are you on being a military target? It's just the primary military command of your entire species, and it's just floating, clearly almost completely undefended. Yeah, no, it's just
so I love our audience here. Chameleon Kale suggesting, well, what if it has explosive fuel? Whispering did agree that the exposed reactor trope, this could be a Death Star, I suppose you're right. And Kevmo, he rolls in with a comment. What do you do? This is like our bird of prey problem. I'm not our bird of prey, our Romulan warbird problem.
Yeah.
Daenerys class, which has the big double hull. What happens if you're working, because this is huge, right? There's like, I don't know, 100 decks high on each arm. What if you're working in left arm? And you have a meeting all the way in right arm. Do you know how many turbo lifts you'd have to take?
Well,
or assuming it's like the movie era turbo lifts that are in the magic space in between everything, how long that turbo lift ride would be at the very least?
The movie era turbo lifts are bullshit. So complete BS. They're like, look, man,
they did that on Discovery and the finale. It's horrible.
In TNG, there are turbolifts that can go like sideways and stuff because they're just tubes designed for that.
But they're
so the
tubes.
question
Yes.
is Lysian turbolift technology so good that you could take a turbolift from, say, the right arm all the way up to the central disk and it'll wrap around and come down to the left disk? In which case, could you imagine how long you might have to wait for one to show up because they'll go that far?
Well, you would hope they would have enough in the shaft, but gosh, that'd be horrible.
I mean, I'm just saying that there's some real logistic issues. Or does it take you up, drop you off, and then you have to run your butt all the way across over to another turbo lift? Or do they have like or do they at least have like, you get up to the central disk and maybe they've got those moving floors like you have in airports?
The escalator sidewalks, which by
and then
the way,
if you walk on them while they're moving, you feel extra fast.
Kind of feel like Superman when you're walking on those.
There's also one last important question related to this. Do you think it's carpeted in there?
Conrad, you beat me to it. I was going to ask, do you think Big Carpet got to them? Because Big Carpet would see this, all right? Previous listeners of the show would know that Big Carpet, it came about because we noticed all the carpeting in Starfleet vessels and space stations. In fact, one space station, I believe it was Starbase 74, was it? Had carpeting on the walls and the chairs. Like, I don't know what was going on there, but that's clearly like some sort of corrupt budget thing. But Conrad, this is huge. This is 100 stories high on both arms. There's a lot of mileage for carpet. Of course, Big Carpet, who's probably partially owned by a Ferengi commerce group, definitely showed up and made a pitch.
Well, the question is it Big Carpet or did Big Linoleum win out? In which case, you've got like those little buffer machines and mopping, and it's possibly worse. Kevmo in the chat here has a great question, which is, what if their society is based around individually owned personal movement carts and deeply underfund their turbolifts? Like, are the Lysians kind of got a libertarian bend around it, but it's a libertarian view specifically around personal trends? They're like, look, man, why should we build
are we talking like little go-karts?
I'm thinking like a little egg-shaped go-kart thing with wheels on the side, so you drive it up to like a turbolift shaft and it goes in itself.
The producers of Deep Space Nine completely missed out when they didn't have go-karts on the promenade. I'm just saying, it could have worked.
How did we never, or a golf cart, how did we never have Data and, not Data, how did we never have
One of the
Odo
actors.
and his
Odo.
deputies pull up in a golf cart, like just rolls around, like all of a sudden he's like, "We need security," and up comes a golf cart, like, and off hops like two patrol deputies, and Odo pulled out their little phasers, being like, "Quark, we need to talk to you about this." And then Quark's like, "What?" And then Odo's like, "All right, like guys, we're gonna talk about this in private." And then Odo and him get back on the golf cart, and then we have a scene where for 5 minutes they're just driving in a loop around the promenade, having a private conversation before Odo drops him back off.
The audience here
I
is
watched
getting
that scene.
That is fantastic. I love it. That would be Conrad at top. By the way, the audience is losing it over here. Kevmo suggesting it could look like those flat airport luggage carts. Whispering is suggesting a Segway. Chameleon Kale is now suggesting a futuristic golf cart and asking, what would that look like? Well, obviously it depends who you are. I think if it's Starfleet, it's definitely going to have like blue on the back for no reason, like a glowing blue patch that doesn't run anything. No wheels.
If it's Starfleet, it's got no wheels. It's like just hovering randomly.
Right? If it's Cardassians, it has unnecessary ridges like they do in between all their hallways and doors and be that weird thing. If it's Klingon, it would just be a Targ with like a cup holder attached.
Well, if it's Klingon, what it essentially is it's like a four-wheeled cart thing, but it's more like, and just two Targs pull it. And it's got like a roll cage.
I'm
just
and of course, Ferengis would have a coin-operated one. You can only get like a quarter mile per coin. So,
slips like a slip of platinum gets you X amount of time. It's like put it in. You own it. Yeah, I know, but that's how it works, man. I gotta use.
By the way, I gotta warn you. Every now and then you cut out when you go high in the laugh register. It might be your filter setting that you've got.
That's probably
going.
my filters. But
yeah, it's no big deal. Carter. I want to discuss these awesome looking Sentry pods. I think these are partial recycles of the Sentry of the defense system around Earth and the best of both worlds, but they're used to so much better effect visually here.
I really dig these. They got their little. I don't know if they're supposed to be warp nacelles or what, but they got these little outrigger pods.
They're almost certainly not warp nacelles. So for viewers at home, they're roughly for people who are listening, they're roughly the size of shuttles, would you say, maybe?
I mean, that's the perspective.
They're definitely like an off-white, like they came out of the factory white, and they've had a little bit too much exposure to the sun, and they've got some weird tan. They've got rounded kind of rectangle body with two rounded rectangle nacelles with cool red phaser ports that are glowing up on the front. And Conrad, I don't know, are those sunroofs for like an automated pod, or those like satellite domes? They've got two of them on the top.
So
there.
Look, there's a couple ways to go. They could be like either like satellite domes or like so our brother being a pilot in the Navy, the big dome on the kind of planes that he would fly, the sensor dish. But honestly, what if that's where the AI is? And there's like little lights and it can rotate around, kind of like that's where the drone itself is.
A Star Trek equivalent of an R2-D2 kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that would suddenly be way more adorable.
Which, if that's true, you notice there's a front one and a back one. So there's a pilot and a co-pilot / gunner AI, because their AI technology is so primitive. They have to have two AIs in order to make it work.
That would be kind of sad. But also, honestly, the laser shots against the Enterprise that they do are, this is going to sound weird, some of the prettiest lasers I think we've seen. And they're like phasers. I know. No one needs to correct me.
The only one I can think that's better are the purple lasers from
our episode Purple Lasers, I believe, which is they're the race of scavengers that are trying to be reassimilated into their society with the lady assassin who's like 100 years old and looks 20.
Hey, you know what? So I was happy because it turns out if you type Stardate supplemental purple lasers, it's Google knows what I'm talking about. Yes.
Well, if you get very specific, I'm glad we
Episode 27, Brule and Chorgan are just a pair of leather jacket, dazzling, luxurious haired, deep V-chest haired, showing space pirate punks.
I used to write
the
better.
Gatherers.
There
That's
we
who
go.
they were. That's the name.
Gathers.
Also, I love the description here about this. That episode was great. People should go back and listen.
That was one of our good ones. I want to say these for those who are listening, the lasers they start kind of orange and they kind of go into this sort of pinkish red as they hit the shields. But it was just a very surprisingly bright kind of like colorful sequence compared to a lot of phaser shots we see. I know that's a silly thing to hit.
There's actually reflective light off the whole of the Enterprise from the shots. Plus, unlike a lot of small drones that stand no chance of hurting the Enterprise, they actually get a few shots off first. Now, mind you, Enterprise is like, yeah, that's we could just.
They're all vaporized on screen a moment later from a little poop, 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 poop. It's a great little sequence. It goes to show they have the budget in season 5. It's kind of mature. It's in the moment. The budget's going to clearly taper off through season 7 as Deep Space Nine starts to cannibalize it, but they've got a little more time for it yet. I really like these sentry pods. They only had like 23 though, Conrad. And you have to feel that if you're in a war and you have the enemies, the Satarans who are trying to destroy you, you would probably want to defend your one and only base a little bit.
Well, they also have no home guard. There's no, like, look, okay, when Voyager popped out of a transwarp conduit into, the Sol system, a armada of mixed ships showed up. Now, mind you, I think that's because Starfleet learned their mistake after the battle of Wolf 359.
Because the first time there was no one there, literally.
Well, when that one's coming up, they're like, so what do we got? They're like, we've got a couple of Excelsior ships, 4 Winnebagos, and some Oberths, and that's what we got. And some other ships you've never heard of. Like the battle, everybody's like, how did we lose the game? I'm like, not to be short of it, but there were some Miranda-class ships that were like holding the line there, and that's an old ship.
75 years old, I think, at the time of it. So yeah,
the Federation learned from the mistakes, but the Lysians here, they're like, we got like 23 drones. What else do we need?
And I should actually say again, for the people listening, I want to describe the command center real quick before we talk about their destroyer. It's got a disc-like top with a big ring blue light underneath with a dome attached. It's got 2 big legs that come down that look like they're about at least 50 stories tall, maybe 100 stories tall each, that are sort of, I don't know, kind of like puffy tubes like breadsticks, but like with a blue and red aesthetic of Starfleet. And then it's got one arbitrarily bent leg that comes off underneath that has these little stalactite like superstructures.
Like whoever was building the original model screwed up and they just decided to roll with it. I love the purple lighting that's going on here from this.
It's gorgeous.
Part of me wonders, like, what did they use to make the original model? There's something about these that are eerily familiar, like they're part of some microphone.
You could definitely look this up. There are nerd magazines that were devoted specifically to the models.
To figuring this stuff out.
I do want to point out that in reference to the whole Miranda classes holding the line, Chameleon Kale said, imagine the stories that you could tell being on those ships, 75 years old and holding the line. Yes, except for most of them didn't survive. Now, granted, Benjamin Sisko was on one such ship, and he did live. But that was after the ship blew up.
With a pretty reasonable dose of PTSD.
Yeah.
And like a dead wife. So like
it was a rough situation.
That was a rough situation. And one ship canonically. You know what canonically is the Canadian version of how people would normally say that word. Canonically?
Canonically sounds about right. Do we want to briefly talk about their destroyer? This card lasted 2 seconds on screen also. I should bring this up.
You actually did a really good job of capturing a shot here. So first off, this destroyer, I'm assuming what they did is they went and raided a old Battlestar Galactica collection and then put a Gundam wing like V stolen from a model on the bottom of it because it looks like it's got upside down antenna.
It's just the angle messing with you. This is actually the same model used for the Talarian ships in that episode. But so it's an angular prow. You are right in the sense that the classic Battlestar Galactica ships share this design aesthetic. For that matter, kind of like a budget Star Destroyer from Star Wars in a way, right? It's got that angle. This is a light gray in its current profile, and it does have these 2 fins. I assume there's a matching pair on the bottom because of the way the model's been used before. But the way it approaches on camera, it kind of looks like an upside-down 1980s rabbit-themed spacecraft.
Right. Like, that's what I'm talking about. I've got some elements of Battlestar Galactica, and, like, they stole, like, the headpiece from a Gundam. And, but you're right. I like, looking closely, I'm like, you're right. That is the reuse of the Talarian ships. But, and there is an element to that design. What I love about this is, unlike the big races, the big 3, and the Cardassians, who are, like, that rump state that pretends they're important.
Right.
They have like more swoopy designs, a little bit more elegant, but there's this retro look to a lot of these smaller ones, which I swear I don't know if they purposely went with that old school design look that looks like that old 60s, 70s Battlestar Galactica like era of sci-fi. Did they do that on purpose? Or did they like literally start by rating some models and being, okay, what can we do to spiff this up? Because
I'm
it's so
positive
different.
the answer was some guy did a great sketch, and then the props department had a budget. So all the best laid plans for these guest ships probably runs up against the budget.
Well, the budget, and that's why they reuse so many models. Obviously, it's just interesting how many of the you always know somebody's a minor player when the less swoopy their ship is. Usually.
But also that kind of makes sense too, because you're probably still at a technological phase where you're building for functionality. I mean, no matter what you can say about the Enterprise D, it's gorgeous, but functionality was not the design decision for making it swoopy. They just wanted it to look cool. It's hard to deny that fact, right?
Well,
like, there's an advantage to certain aspects, like the really oversized saucer section allows for a much bigger habitation and family and whatnot, which was a big part of its aspect, but it was also just to kind of look cool.
Well, and you have to wonder when they pitched that, because if you think about the old Constitution class, the Miranda, the movie era ships from the original series, and then you look at the Galaxy class, and you're like, it's real swoopy. It's like, what is this? Some organic space thing?
It kind of looks like a Cobra from the back, actually. You know.
Oh, it does. I'm into that.
I'm doing Cobra.
Is there a USS
gestures.
Cobra? People, you gotta let me know about
okay,
this.
but actually, I really want to say about this destroyer, though, which, by the way, is killed with a phaser shot, not even a torpedo. It's got 53 crew members. It's probably about a tenth the size of the Enterprise. It's alone. It's at the border. This thing isn't protecting the home. This is protecting the border. And can you imagine being a crew member on this thing when your captain says, well, we're going to shoot at them? And, there's a tactical officer with a scanner or just someone who can do, math as to how big the Enterprise is. It's like, are you sure, boss? Well, we don't really need to kill ourselves here.
It's interesting because it's almost presented in the script almost an automated response. Like they came up and foolishly shot the Enterprise. But if you think about it, there's this ship on the border. They're a patrol ship, a custom ship, whatever. But purportedly, actually, as near as we can tell, the only battleship in the entire fleet.
How often does that happen on the Federation side? Remember, they always say, the Enterprise, you're the only one. So this was the Enterprise of their fleet, which is sad.
But, their captain, Dugan, the Lysian.
That's how you make names in sci-fi with no time. You come up with a normal English name, and then you tag on
some extra letters. So Dugan, and there's at least one apostrophe or hyphen in there. I don't know. And you're sitting there, you're drinking your Lysian equivalent to coffee, which I assume looks like blue space milk. And
that sounds like what their budget could afford. Yeah.
And it's got a hint of raspberry, which it's very off-putting. So you're sipping your blue raspberry milk. To get your morning fix, and you receive the message that this alien warship from the Federation, by the way, appears to be on a collision course with your homeworld, and you're the one that gets called to stop it. And they're not listening, they're not answering hails, and you have the choice. You could turn away and fly away from the obviously drastically superior ship, or you're like, guys, what? We're going to make a stand. If they're going to come into our territory, it's got to be an act of war, which means we're going to go out and we're going to stop them. And then your crew's you rally the whole crew because the whole crew's got to be talking.
You're trying to make this guy way more heroic than he has any right to be.
Well, what I'm just saying is, it's one of those elements where, it's a little throwaway shit, but part of me...
If you're going to commit an act of suicide, what you do is you engage full warp while pointed at the Enterprise.
Well, that would be the better call.
That would do more damage.
Instead, they tried to fly up, and then, Worf does a pop shot because he's bored.
Yeah, and then boom. And, c'est la vie, Dugan's version of the Enterprise. So, yeah, the Lysians, Conrad, probably nice people once you get to know them, but, and gorgeous space tech, actually, but it's kind of interesting.
I love some of the space tech. I mean, but there's definitely... Yeah, it's really interesting. Well, one of the commenters there has to be some reasons they don't warp through each other. I think the biggest reason is that the space-time field for a warp bubble is very difficult to interact with in a way to allow you to do a collision course easily.
Well, we know that they can do it because at several times captains have ordered the pilots to prepare to do it for a suicide charge for plot reasons. So the answer is plot reasons.
And they decide not to pull a Star Wars and be like, hey, you know how we have this canon thing about hyperspace? Yeah. Let's just throw it out of the window. And this one time, somebody actually pulls it off and warps through a thing with it. And they're like, how come nobody, like, you don't need a Death Star to take out planets with that kind of thing. You just hyperspace like a ship into a planet and it's gone. Why waste the budget? I'm telling you.
Well, they say you can't build throwaway warp drives. Ironically, photon torpedoes have warp drives, albeit very small ones, which is why they work at warp. But admittedly, for a ship that size, you're right. Budget is a concern, even in a culture without traditional finance like Starfleet and the Federation. Certainly, it's resource intensive to build a war vessel. Especially a warp capable one.
I mean, when you think about it, a photon torpedo is a bottle of antimatter stashed into a tube that's loaded with a space-time bending engine.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, actually. Like, one photon torpedo that doesn't explode is jackpot for a culture that finds it and reverse engineers it. I'm just saying.
One of our listeners here, Ocarina, just said photon torpedoes can be replicated, though. To my knowledge, actually, they can't replicate antimatter. Because, in other words, there's a lot of episodes
certain components can be, antimatter cannot, and dilithium cannot, although there's a way to regenerate it. So those would be limitations for just throwing those weapons out en masse. But you're right, I think the warhead can be, for that matter, because, actually, no, it's an antimatter warhead, you're right.
Because if that was that easy, you remember in Voyager they actually kept track of how many actual photon torpedoes they had. If they could just replicate
they're
them.
like, we have 72, and then like a couple of years later we have 12. We better watch out. Wesley can grow it.
Wesley can grow it.
I mean, if the Traveler arc on Wesley proves anything, yes, he can. Conrad, you've been trying to dodge your fate for a long time, not knowing what's going on, but I think we've given the Lysians their due. Are you ready for the new segment, which we will be doing today instead of our usual What Would DeSoto Do, where we are going to look at not the A plot of the episode, which was we lost our memory, not the B plot of the episode, which was Riker gets it on, but the C plot of the episode, as told by Conrad.
So real quick distraction before we go to that segue to put off my fate. One, I just now realized you're right. The B plot is Riker gets it on.
Literally, that's the majority of the other episode, yeah.
That's amazing. Two, Kevmo says that Wesley can grow it. He did it in season 1, the duel. So now everybody needs to go look at the duel and see if Wesley actually grew. Oh, well, you know what? Is that the one with the Hathaway where Wesley used his lab experiment to simulate the amount of energy necessary to get a warp field up for half a second? I think that's what we're talking about there, which was pretty cool, but I don't think you can make a photon torpedo that way.
I also like that it basically looked like silly putty, whatever he used. Like, that's kind of cool.
Well, also, I think maybe schools on the Enterprise should do a little bit. That was his science fair project. And, like, his science fair project was able to make a old, broken warship move at warp speed for a half a second. Do you know how much potential energy was sitting in his mom's, like, space condo? I'm just.
By the way, we do discuss that episode in our episode number 21 on the podcast Robot Puppet. That's one of our treats. We love every time we get to talk about the Constellation classes. Those were a lot of fun. Or is it Constitution? I can't. You know what? You're going to have to go look it up. Anyway,
that's a Constellation class, the Hathaway.
We love the Hathaway, is what I'm saying. All right.
And when we get to Voyager, I'm going to show you how much we love
All right, Conrad. I don't have a bump yet, but I do have a graphic. So
let's do it.
Everyone, it's time for the C plot, a.k.a. story time with Conrad.
Okay. One, I love this photo. But two, if you're going to go through the trouble to do this edit, you need to put baby Lloyd's face on the baby.
Okay, I can do that. Absolutely. By the way,
also, the C plot, a.k.a. story time with Conrad, it should be Conrad crossed out and then say Cobra.
Okay, I'll remember that. Also, by the way, that baby totally stings the camera. She's watching like directly the screen. That whole
when you put
sequence.
A baby randomly in an episode full of children, you're gonna get that. Oh my gosh, it's just bad. It's just bad.
Oh, and Kevmo would like to correct us. That was season 2, episode 21, peak performance. Incidentally.
Oh, okay, so we had the right storyline, but the wrong name. Peak
the wrong
episode. Episode 21, season 2. In which case, Wesley's mom wasn't around to stop him from growing an explosive space.
Absolutely. So, Conrad, it's the C plot, and I forgot to put a photo up here. So, hey, look at that. We're doing this live. But what's really important to know about this is that I'm going to be taking results from our poll that the listeners have been
no.
answering throughout, and I'm going to be subjecting you to basically ad-libbing a scenario based on what people were doing. Okay, so you are going to be our guinea pig of dealing with that. Now, I'm actually using Photoshop behind the scenes to put in a placeholder image. So this is going to be just a moment. You tell everyone a great thing that happened today that you really
happened
liked.
today. What's a great thing that happened today? Oh, I got a new phone. I went and got a Samsung. So I had a older phone that was a Samsung Note 10. I just started using, and then me and girlfriend of the show, Casey, were talking. And since we're both employees of a company that sells phones, we're like, hey, we could go get new phones pretty easily. And we decided we wanted to do that. And so we picked up some the new Samsung whatever they are now, 21 Ultra super phones. And technology's really come along. Like Star Trek's really got to step its game up in order to keep up with the technology in these phones. But of course, the first thing I did was immediately figure out how to put the 15-second video on so I could get Riker playing the trombone and Data making a face as my lock screen in the background, because that just makes me so very happy. Also, yes, it gave us hypo sprays. I want hypo sprays. We need that. Because as much as I don't terribly mind needles, my baby hates them. And when we take him in to get his shots, listening to him cry fills me with sadness because he's so very sad.
Are you just for the sake of the babe, huh? I guess
Well,
I'll allow that.
well, also, then you wouldn't have to swap out. There's a lot of advantages to getting rid of needles if you could just do hypo sprays. Like, they make sense.
Oh no, I'm totally down with the concept.
I'm just saying, from a personal perspective,
Conan,
I'll take a shot, whatever, but my baby.
all right, so here's how it's going to work, okay? So you're going to only have so much time to work with this, but you have to tell us about the C plot of our most recent episode. Now, I am going to use answers from the polls, and I'm going to prompt you with questions, and you need to describe the events that happened in the not aired on TV third segment that was going on in between memory loss and Riker having a great time with the ladies, okay? So, and it does feature the chief. So, Conrad, I asked the watchers, the viewers, Crewman O'Brien spends most of the episode with whom? Because we never see him. And the options were Mott the Barber, Spot, Data's cat, Reginald Barkley, and Minuet, the hologram that Riker wants to bang. They chose Mott the Barber, who's bullying.
I was worried they would have picked a Minuet.
That would have made it difficult. So that's the first thing. And also, what this is going to lead into it is after the memory wipe happens, Conrad, we have a tie. So, due to a brain wipe and database error, O'Brien thinks he's either Fleet Magazine's 2368 Sexiest Starfleet crewman, a Romulan double agent, the Federation ambassador from Ryza, or Riker's older brother, Miles Riker. Unfortunately, we have a tie on this one, so I'm going to be the tiebreaker and say he thinks he is a Romulan double agent. Okay? So,
what was it tied with? I have to ask.
The Federation ambassarour from Ryza. Which, if you really want, we can go with that
he's
one.
He's palling around with Mott, and he thinks he's a Romulan what?
A Romulan double agent. So a Romulan who's been surgically altered to look like. Now, why was O'Brien with Mott when the whole thing happens, and how did that convince him that he's a double agent when he's trying to figure out who he is? Go.
All right, so a lot of people don't know this, but Miles O'Brien, before he transferred to Deep Space Nine and became best friends with a plucky Dr. Bashir, was actually his drinking buddy, his pints night out kind of guy, was Mott the Barber, right? So, they're both lower deckers. Mott's a barber, Miles is a transporter operator, and a chief. But, we're talking about the best barber in Starfleet and the best transporter officer in Starfleet. Like, there's a reason these two are serving here. So naturally, Miles goes in, gets his hair cut. They have some talks. Next thing you know, they're really good buds.
Now
so
they're not at
getting
10
pints.
They're not at 10 forward. So where are they having their beverages?
Well, they're on a holodeck. See, that's where I'm going with this. So they're out for pints. All right. Miles needs a night out because he loves Keiko, but he still thinks her cooking is really weird. And when I say cooking, I mean her replicator choices. So Mott's like, what?
It's funny how they'll say I cooked this meal, and by which they mean they talked into the speaker.
So Mott's like, hey, Miles, let's go out. Let's go to the holodeck. And Miles is, I'll go out, but there needs to be Guinness, and it needs to be a bar of some sort. Mott's like, I can make that work. So they go down to the holodeck. Mott dials up his favorite, like his hobby is recreating historical Romulan timepieces. So he's got like the equivalent of like a 22nd century Romulan bar. Romulan, like, it's not even like more like the Romulan take on an izakaya, right? You get
Romulan
your Romulan
izakaya. Got it.
Yeah, you got your Romulan soup bowls with like your fried, tofu flakes and your cold pints, but there's Guinness there, and Miles is like, close enough, it works. And of course they got to dress up when they go in. Mott's all about full in. So they're in there and they're having a conversation, and we know Miles likes to role play a little bit, and that's when the mind wipe happens. And so because of the stuff lying around and they wake up, they kind of think that they're actually Romulan spies. That's why they've got this setup. So it's not just that Miles thinks he's a Romulan double agent, so does Mott.
Okay, so Conrad, they take a moment, they assess. First, they probably think they're on Romulus until like the holodeck turns off due to like this thing and an error a moment later, and then they're trying to get their feeding back. So I asked our viewers, O'Brien and his friend are convinced they need to do what as their goal for this episode? And the answers were throw a birthday party, but for who? Defeat the command crew, who are clearly imposters, build this city on rock and roll, or end the holodeck program, which this obviously is. Incidentally, rock and roll got 0 votes. I'm very disappointed.
I'm disappointed in everybody.
The winning answer was defeat the command crew, who are imposters. So, Conrad, not only do they both think that they're Romulan agents, they think for the sake of the Enterprise, they need to stop the command crew from completing their mission. Now, nothing you can describe can conflict with what we've seen on screen, so they clearly do a bad job.
Okay. I want to say first off that if Miles O'Brien hadn't lost his memory before then, that whole command crew would be dead.
Now, in Act 1, you were required to include a bottle of Romulan ale, which incidentally is very fitting in this case.
Okay, I've got notes, so sorry for the typing. So, Miles O'Brien and Mott the Barber. Miles and Mott. Or Miles, that's like Malaise.
M&M, is that their friendship name?
Like, they basically both put apostrophes in their name because they're convinced they're Romulan double agents now. So they've got
so
to
it's Miles and Ma'at. Okay.
Exactly. So the first thing that they're going to need is some gear, right? They're double agents. Now, Keiko's not in on this because, Miles is a good double agent and his wife doesn't know that he's Romulan. Also, he doesn't know he's married at the moment. So they head back, first off, to Miles' quarters somehow. And in there, he's got stashed naturally, like any good chief in the Federation, a bottle of Romulan ale. He gets that out, pops it open, sets it on the table, lays out, well, I was going to say like a big map of the ship that they're going to start plotting over, but it's actually like just a pad, So
probably just a pad. It's not as impressive when you just roll out the pad. You just set it down and you push the button.
Hits a button, and he's like, okay, so here's what we got to do. We got to take out the command crew. This is why the wipe happened. Totally what's going on. So now's our time. So him and Mott spend some time poring over the plans, and they decide that a direct assault is going to have to come through the doors into the bridge, and that's too difficult. That's going to cause a problem because
absolutely,
you've got like security up there. They've got booby traps or something. Miles is like, no, better. So what he plots out is a sinister hike through the Jeffries tubes. It's about 12 kilometers of Jeffrey tubes.
At this exact moment, there's a knock on the door because Riker and Ro are doing their, assessment of every department, who's all here, knocks on it, Like, do you think this is a panic moment? Like, Mott's, like, downing directly from the bottle and, like, spills some Romulan ale all over himself?
So at this point, like, Miles is just pointing at, like, the junction they need to go to in the thing like that, and Mott's taking a swig, and then it's the, housekeeping, except for this, it's command crew, and then, like, so Mott spills and, like, spews out a big cloud, like, all over Miles. Well, I was like, so they grab their improvised weapons that they've slashed together, and what it turns out is Miles was already levered open. Little known fact, Miles O'Brien has a Jeffries tube that leads into, like, there's a panel. He picked his quarters on purpose, and the two of them shimmy into the Jeffries tube, pulling it close behind them moments before Riker and Rollard open the doors, see the empty room, the turned off pad.
That smells and looks of stains of Romulan ale, by the way. Just saying.
Right, well, exactly. But they decide, since there's nobody there to answer the questions, now's a good time to stop and get a few kisses in before they move off to, that, like, stolen smooches.
I think Riker grabs that bottle on the way out and says, "Hey, row for later,"
Well, he doesn't just grab it. He grabs it, takes a swig, passes it to her. She takes a swig, and then she, like, gives him a wink and slaps him on the bum.
And a hey. So, Conan, at this point, they're in the Jeffrey tubes, and now we're switching over to Act 2. All right?
Okay.
At this point, Geordi has figured out who everyone is, according to the dossier on the thing. Mm-hmm. So, the bartender Data is slowly working his way with Troy to a briefing, and they're learning that they're at war with the Lysians. Meanwhile, you must, as you continue this plot, tell us, you have to include one of the following. It was going to be either a temporarily displaced Romulan engineer, a dance routine, I was kind of hoping for that, a replicator that won't stop replicating hot beer, or Data's misplaced hand curled into a fist. Now, this one was a tie, but because Chameleon Killed said he intended to do the hot beer vote, a replicator that won't stop replicating hot beer is the winner, and that is something that you have to work in partway through this next segment while the Enterprise is now on the move again to the Lysian border.
Okay, so the Enterprise is on the move. Now, Miles and Mott, being Romulan saboteurs that are hiking the 12 kilometers through the Jeffries tube that, Miles set up, because this will avoid all the security sweeps. There's no way they can get stopped. But partway through, it actually drops down into a junior officer, like, break room. That's one of the stops. You got to hop down out of the Jeffries tubes, cross the break room, up into another Jeffries tubes, right? Now, what happened was the mine sweep went through at the same time one of the junior officers was about to order a beer, and the side effect of the beam made him spew out a command, which basically translated to hot beer as far as the computer was concerned. But also the computer was damaged slightly by the sweep.
So now it's just spewing hot beer.
There's a replicator that's been spewing hot beer since this whole episode started.
So this has already been in an abandoned room. So they drop into, like, a swimming pool of hot beer.
So essentially beer that is coming out at, like, I don't know, somewhere about 100 degrees out of a replicator stream. And it's now about knee deep because the doors are closed to this
I want
room.
to point out that that's Fahrenheit to our listeners, to everyone who's not American,
like British listeners or every other listener. Okay, fair. Yeah. No. So they hop. So first off, they come in and there's just these they're already getting tipsy just by the fumes pouring out of here as they get close. They look down in it and they're like, "Look, we've got to do this." All right. Miles goes first. Mott comes down. And now the good news is, due to the volume of the room, it's not quite 100 degrees when they drop in it, but it's like a smoggy beer sauna,
like a beer sauna,
a beer Cinto, a beer hot spring. Like it's like just waft of the heat. Like they're sweating, but your sweat's mixing with the beer that's coalescing in the air on your skin.
I'm going to say Mott's definitely getting taxed at this point. He's an out of shape bullion.
Which makes it odd.
He's inhaling beer in his nostrils. It's not good.
So Miles actually literally has to backpack him through the room because Mott can't keep going. Mott's the intelligence one, right? Like he's there to gather intelligence by doing the barbershop stuff. Miles is the guy there, the commando, right? That's why this team was picked. So Miles has to backpack him through. They're both getting contact high from all the beer pouring off their skin and just the smell of hops. And it's only with the just minorest margin that a hot, sweaty, sticky. Miles O'Brien drags his bully and friend up through into the next Jeffries tube, closing the door behind them, and the two just fall flat on their backs inside the Jeffries tube, and they're just kind of panting at the roof, staring, just like...
So Carter, so this is fantastic because Camille Kell says this is what an image. At this point, I'm going to say that they were so taxed by this that they've gotten virtually nowhere in this entire hall, and they're only now beginning to approach the command center of the Enterprise, the bridge complex, right? So as we're entering our final act, the Enterprise is now beginning to approach the Lysian command center. Miles thinks he's really on time to save the world, but he's drunk. Mind you, he's of Irish ancestry and historically has survived some pretty heavy drinking on Deep Space Nine, so we can handle it. Mott's probably almost impossible to drag at this point. But now you must include in our final act, I had a list. It was either an unplanned sword fight, O'Brien's transporter nemesis, Chief McDougal, a turbo lift full of grade schoolers, or bagpipes. The viewers chose a turbo lift full of grade schoolers. So, Conrad, Miles is going to have to get to the bridge with the intent of taking them over just as the episode's drawing towards a conclusion. And that's your challenge is we've got grade schoolers in the way.
All right. So look, here's the thing. Mott at this point is between exhaustion and beer fumes, can mostly only use consonants. He doesn't even have any vowel sounds left. So like he's trying to communicate mostly like clicking. Like, can you imagine that? Just and that's the advice. And meanwhile, O'Brien has like unzipped his uniform because they can magically have a zipper in the front when they're hot, and then and has peeled it up. So he's shirtless.
Ooh,
all right,
bare-chested O'Brien. He's
got an improvised phaser that's built out of some of those data crystal thingies, the isolinear chips, like wired to like a battery he found.
Those probably belong to something important. Like there's the arboretum's like temperature control is failing dramatically. Keiko's going to kill him later when she finds out.
And a knife that he carved out of a access panel on the way there. That's what he's got. He's got those stuffed into his pants.
Has he ripped part of his uniform that he took off to make a headband to keep the sweat out of his eyes?
Yeah, no, he's got like a gold.
So this is a Rambo moment.
He's in his Rambo moment. And meanwhile, Mott is just like shed off most everything. Mott's down to like his Starfleet skivvies, and again, it's mostly just following him making consonant noises. But Brian is so drunk that he keeps talking. He's like, "Yeah, that's right. That's great. This is a good plan. Yeah, we can do it. Okay, Mott, cool." And so what it is the last stage of it. They get there, and the access point to get down into the bridge is through a hatch that leads to the top hatch that turbolifts have. Because just like every elevator in a movie, turbolifts have a secret panel you can push open.
As we know, actually, I think elevators are supposed to have that in real life. By the way,
unknown to O'Brien, this turbolift is full of grade schoolers, because the teacher, or at least the person that woke up and they decided was the teacher in there, has decided they've had it. They are done with these grade schoolers.
Which Starfleet officer is the teacher due to the misunderstanding? Is it Reggie? Reginald Barclay?
It is Reginald.
Like a nervous teacher, because it's Reggie who knows nothing about teaching, but all these kids are around him.
All these kids are around him, and the thing is that they couldn't find a real, because they only really got the barest details on the crew. So Reginald's he's like, I've done it, I've had it with these kids. You know what? We're gonna take you up, and you're Captain Picard's problem now. That's what's going on with all of you here. So there is a very agitated and nervous, doesn't know who he is, Reginald Barclay, and like 16 grade schoolers, because he's just packed them all into the same turbolift there. And then all of a sudden, the top panel pops open, and you could just smell them before they get in there. The fumes coming off O'Brien as Mott. So O'Brien kind of does like a thing where he comes down and he hangs and his feet are there for a moment before he drops down and lands on top of Reginald.
Is it the vaguely awkward one, and it's not like a good drop?
Awkward one where he kind of tackles him, but it's more of he just fell on him feet first and takes him down. Meanwhile, Mott essentially rolls through and tumbles down through the opening just kind of lands with a heavy thud just a few feet away from the kids in the back of it. Like O'Brien, the timing of and he lands down, and you see that go down, and the kids are all they do that brief scream, and they're all pointing, and then just at that point in the background you see Mott go, and he just lands there, and he stops moving. He's just Static, like he's out. He's down for the count.
I think at this point, it's just so beautiful. So O'Brien's there, like with his makeshift phaser assembly, whatever you call this handful of chips with a battery that he's pointing at Reggie as he stands up. And the two probably get, I imagine, in a bit of a hand-to-hand fight as all the kids were screaming and hitting Mott because they don't know what's going on. And that's when the door opens and Worf and Riker have just finished stunning, actually, I think phasering to death, the imposter aboard the bridge. And like, all right, we've saved the Lysians. Well, and then they look over.
Okay, so the doors open. You hear childish screams of the children that are using their book bags to beat the unconscious form of Mott the Barber. And then at that same time, because of their like down to fisticuffs grappling, O'Brien, a shirtless O'Brien with his headband, and Barclay come flying out the turmoil of doors, and then they kind of hit that edge, and you know that wraparound ramp that leads down.
Yeah,
they go down the one on the right side, just like. And then land at the end with Barclay on top of O'Brien, who's mostly out of it at this point because the fumes have finally caught up with him. And then Barclay looks up at the captain and he's like, "They're your problem now."
I'm too old for this. I quit. I think credits.
I think credits.
That is I love it. Honestly, this was a fun sequence. Yeah, so yeah, everyone, that was the first ever C plot. We're probably going to be bringing this one back out more. Conrad, I'm going to get these polls more clever as I go, so I have to warn you, because I'm playing around with Twitch tools for the live stream, and so it's going to get wild and wacky. With that said, that was Star Trek Next Generation, Season 5, Episode 14, Conundrum, including the content. They were cowards that they did not air, as described by Conrad. The Lysians, as a concept, I thought it was sort of a neat way to look at the borders, so to speak, of an area that's not unknown to Starfleet, but just isn't really relevant to them, except for when they get. I would feel really nervous if I was a member of a nation that one drunk officer in like a Miranda class starship has a good chance of taking you out. You know,
I mean, I think canonically a runabout like with a cause, because runabouts all have photon torpedoes, right?
Yeah, and I'm just saying, how many times have we seen rogue Starfleet officers? A lot. We've seen them a lot. Remember the Phoenix, Conrad? Remember how the Phoenix was just kind of allowed by Picard to run around for a few days in Cardassia?
Warp 4 everywhere. It's the Cardassians were being really patient about being like, hey, so he's murdering our people. Could we stop that? And Picard's like, let's not jump to any conclusions here. Let's just take it slow.
It's like, you say he's murdering a lot of people, but is he? Is he? And the answer was yes. Yes, he was.
Yes.
All right. So with that said, Conrad, next week we are going to be looking at a different show. Obviously, I spoke that well as I was pulling this up in multitasking. We're going to be looking at the USS Essex, which you don't actually see on screen, but we get to encounter some of its crew on Star Trek Next Generation, Season 5, Episode 15, Power Play. This is the one where Data, Troy, and O'Brien are possessed by ghosts. You know, they don't really, wibbly wobbly science ghosts,
space ghosts,
who mess stuff up, because Data being possessed by an evil spirit is probably about as bad of a nightmare scenario as you can get.
I'm just wondering at the logistics of a space spirit possessing an android. But,
yeah,
okay.
Well, it's like how Data's memory got wiped in this episode. Data is different than humans, except for when they need to make him the same.
I guess he did get in like that very early on in one of the first handful of episodes. He got space drunk just like everybody else. So.
Right, exactly. And they're like, why? And it's like, because it made for a good plot.
Okay, I do want to acknowledge the Chameleon said it's no space ghost, that's for sure. And
it was a good pun. I appreciate that. Everyone loves the space ghost coast to coast. Classic. Well, everyone old enough to remember it. Yeah.
Everybody who's like, what, Gen X? Maybe early millennials?
Yeah, so this episode that's going to come, Conrad, will also have Worf in the role of midwife, as he has to help Keiko O'Brien give birth. It's a good one. Everyone, I believe we will be back next Saturday at 9 p.m. to do this, right? Unless you've got plans.
Oh, that's the plan. I do want to point out one more comment before we roll into the credits. Mousewine Stan pointed out, which is girlfriend of the show, Casey. The kids watching just asked why there hasn't been any CGI so far in Star Trek scenes you have shown. Kids, so we're going to put on the Generation X old hat. So this show was coming out when me and Kyle were kids, and we're Gen Xers. So some millennials weren't even around at this time, or they were very little. We didn't have CGI back then. Everything was done with essentially models and like hand overlays and stuff. Real CGI didn't come out until early CGI was at Babylon 5. Deep Space Nine was the first show to really do it.
And if you mean instead our actual show now, it's because your Uncle Kyle is not capable of hand-rolling CGI in a week's time on a show with no budget. Well, I mean, I could fire up a computer and doodle something in Photoshop. Does that count as CGI? Because technically computer generated.
Close enough. I do agree. I like the old look of models, although some CGI is so good nowadays you can't even tell. But
yeah, it's improved dramatically, but Ocarina said, I prefer the old looks of models to CGI ships. It's a trade-off, obviously, and I think it's improved a lot on CGI, but there was that transition period that was particularly rough, I think. But especially high-quality models with a high-quality film, it can look really, really good if it's lit well.
Well, what's always interesting when you get something like Battlestar Galactica, the new reimagined series, versus, like, say, the Orville, to speak of two other science fiction franchises. Well, I like the Orville, and Orville's definitely improved its graphics as it's gone. Battlestar Galactica managed to make their 3D stuff look like models very closely a lot of the time, whereas the Orville is clearly CGI.
And Chameleon Kale just mentioned Jurassic Park, and I just want to point out real quick how Jurassic Park holds up to this day. And those dinosaurs are like steam-powered, plastic-covered, painted, monstrosities. It's amazing what they did with those. I think there was a little bit of touch-up, but like the vast majority of it was practical effects, and that's just amazing. But with that said, Conrad, even our amazing selves eventually have to come to an end, and that time is now. So everyone, thank you for watching or listening to Stardate Supplemental, the Star Trek fan show about the ships not named Enterprise. We are hosts of Brothers Weems. I'm Kyle Weems.
I'm Conrad Weems.
And everybody, we want to remind you that we have a website at www.stardatesupplemental.com. Sorry to the viewers watching live. I'm saying this for the radio folks. If you have found us through some other means, Spotify, whatever, or you're watching on Twitch, at the website, all of our podcast episodes are listed on there. It has not yet been updated to incorporate our live shows, but that is a feature that'll be coming soon. So it'll have links to YouTube, which is where we export our shows after we've edited them down from our live recordings. So please check us out there. Also, we want to let you know we have a Discord. There's a link below, or you can go to our website. I'm not going to say it out loud. It's very annoying alphanumeric kind of code. But you can go to stardatesupplemental.com and click the Discord link if you want to join what we call the Excelsior Captain's mailing list. It's a bit quiet of an environment because it's not a high volume at the moment yet, but that's where us and our fans can share Star Trek memes or Conrad's hilarious promotional images that he's been making for us. Here's one that's put up there. Everyone, we want to remind you, of course, that we love hearing feedback. All the interaction that occurs with you people live on the show, it's been great. Thank you. It's so rewarding of an experience. Also, for everyone listening or watching, you can follow us on Twitter and talk to us about the show or Star Trek there. Stardate Sup, that's Stardate SUP, is the handle on the show. Conrad has his own. It's Cobra Weems. That's Cobra WEE. M as in mouse S, and I am CS Squirrel. That's CSSQUIRREL. We love hearing from people, and that kind of audience interaction and feedback is always really wonderful. Yeah, and for those of you listening, we're still releasing on a bi-weekly format, but you should, it might accelerate over time. For those of you watching next Saturday, at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard. That's midnight East Coast time. That's like 5 a.m. on Sunday for you Brits. We're here.
Look, for our British listeners. All right, it's a challenge, right? You can do it. There's a lockdown going on. Get up in the morning, brew some team. Okay, let me try that again.
Team. What's
brew
team?
some tea. All right, praise the Queen, and get like some toast with beans or whatever you guys eat for breakfast on a Saturday morning, and then just come. Like, we could be part of your morning ritual, is what I'm saying, on Saturday morning.
Apparently, we've already ruined the life of Ocarina, who is now reading up on photon torpedoes to see whether or not you can replicate them. They don't in the show often, but now we're going to learn later. This is what happens. The nerd science of Star Trek is deep. Memory Alpha, by the way, is your friend, folks, that are being original researchers. Anyway, this has been fantastic. To those of you live and to those of you listening, have a great week.
Bye.
I still have to automate this transition.
We're real smooth. Good night, everybody.
I know, right? I know. It's like, can I touch the I don't know where it is now.
Nope, we're off now. Oh.